Nice.
Okay, is that all right? um, it's nerve-wracking though speaking on it, because what's really happened in the last year or so has been this complete sort of aggression towards white non white women from non-religious minorities, um, being told that they shouldn't speak on these topics. So I open my mouth on it and I'm like, oh, but I'm a white woman, which I think is a terrible development that we're seeing in feminism and activism. But I don't want to stay on that point because I go on and on and on and on and on and
Yeah.
on about it. So I'm just looking through. We had some questions that we did want to ask you, so I'm just having a look to see what we haven't actually covered yet. Um, yeah, we picked, Kate and I picked some areas of interest for Palestine in particular. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the three most pressing issues for women in the West Bank?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, sorry. What do you think are the three most pressing issues for women in the West Bank?
Okay, so you mean the most three issues that women face at the West Bank?
Yeah, that you think are the most important to address.
Yeah, actually, first of all, the gender-based violence. Second, they are deprived from their right of freedom of speech. Also from being involved in the leadership positions and their involvement in the labor market in general, including the economics field and the political one as well, because we have a very few number of women who are really engaged and like highly involved in the political field, especially now as we are coming in a very democratic process, the elections, let me say.
Hey!
Yeah.
And
the elections,
for
the
Hanif,
elections were
for our listeners who don't know a lot about Palestine, when were the last elections?
the last elections was at 2006. So the
Yes.
last time the Palestinian people participated at, let me say, at that democratic process was at 2006. And when they declared at 2021 that there will be another elections, unfortunately, at first, actually, I was so happy that for the first time as a Palestinian youth, I'm going to participate in the democratic process, or I will, for like, why not nominating myself for the elections? But I was shocked that youth, who are considering as the largest group in the Palestinian community, they are deprived from the right of being nominated. You have to vote, but you don't have to nominate yourself. So yeah, it's how ironic.
One day, though, one day. Maybe.
Yeah, one day, maybe at 2000, and I don't know, maybe.
Well, let's hope they have more regular elections from now on.
Yeah.
That would be good. So I know when I was there with you, and I spoke to some of the women from the older generation, they actually spoke of a life where they felt there was more freedom and that things have become more difficult for women. Do you know anything about that?
You mean that they found that life before was much more easier than today?
There were women who spoke to me about how that
The
their
old
mothers,
generation?
the old generation would wear far more casual clothing. They felt far.
Yeah, I got your point. I got your point. I don't know actually, as I I unfortunately I don't belong to that old generation. But as I heard from those people, yeah, they usually say that the life was much more easier for women than today, especially when it comes to clothes. I don't know if it is true, but I do believe that since ages till now, women are going through the same stage of violence, of discrimination, and any
Yeah,
and
yeah.
other issues. So yeah, I don't know, but maybe the way women were expecting things, viewing things, for sure was completely different than today. Today we have much more awareness about their rights and about
Yeah.
the things that we can do, about the positions that we can lead, and so on. So I think, yeah, it's there is a gap
Yeah,
between
you're right.
these
You're
two
right.
generations, the new and the old one.
You're right that the gender-based violence and inequality, this has been sort of a frozen position for a long time. And
Yeah.
I think, and you're right, but the for some reason the clothes have shifted. And from my interviews with a couple of women one woman who was working for the UN and another for a women's organization in Hebron, they said that it was because actually women had a significant role in the first Intifada, and they were very useful members of the peaceful struggle against occupation at that time. And there was not a strong force of Islamism. It was community and it was
Yeah.
Palestinian, and it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
about statehood and nationality. But actually, in more recent years, there has been a rise in the likes of Hizb ut-Tahrir and Islamist organizations that have forced the change of dress
True
for
that.
women.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I totally agree with you. People in the old days were not highly attached with religion, so I think there was that kind of a flexibility. They don't take things in like with restrictions and so on. But still, till now, still we have the stereotypical image of the traditional role of women being at the house, serving her wife and children till now. So that stereotypical image of the traditional gender role did not change till now. And here lies the problem. Sometimes it does not only um, uh, depend on the way we clothe, but also on the way we think. I think we have to reshape our own perception of how we view ourselves as a woman at first,
Mm.
then began to spread much more awareness, because I usually say the patriarchal woman is much more dangerous than the patriarchal man,
Yeah,
unfortunately, because
there won't be change for women if women don't want change for themselves.
yeah, exactly. If I don't believe that this is not my role, this is not the thing that I was born to do. So I think from here begins the change. Also, when they have daughters, they won't teach them the things that they were taught ages ago, that you have to get married at a certain age, you have to do this and this and this, and you have to become the kind of submissive girl, obedient girl. So yeah, a lot of things has to
And
be
it's
changed.
interesting. I mean, Kate and I have had this discussion already before, that there's nothing wrong with choosing to be the woman who lives in the home. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But society has to get to a point where any choice is possible first
Yeah.
before you can choose, you can choose to do anything. Yes, Kate, you were going to say something there.
Yeah, I remember something we were speaking about before, Charlotte, and we were talking about this idea that I don't know if this is true, so this is a question for you, Haneen. Is it true that men kind of have so much dominance in, say, the home setting, that even if a woman wanted to speak up and voice change, it's going to be pushed down maybe by her husband or her father? And, even in the case, I was living in Egypt for a while, and I saw a lot of sexual harassment of women in the street. And I thought to myself, if the mothers of these boys were teaching them you cannot do that, then surely they wouldn't do it. They're learning this from somewhere. Is it the street? Is it their brothers, their fathers? Who is telling them this is okay to treat women like this? Because the women want to be treated like this, surely.
True. Yeah. Let me say the majority of families in Palestine, the male figure plays the major role at the house in general, especially when the woman does not work. So being or having no job also gives the man much more let me say freedom to control her, because the moment you have your own job, you have your own money, so no one maybe you will have an equal power with the male figure at the house. But unfortunately, the moment that I decided to stay at home, being not involved in the labor market, uh, highly detached from my rights, and let me say women's rights in general, so it will give men the much more the right to deprive my rights, unfortunately. So usually when it comes, that's why I usually promote for the economic empowerment for women, because it comes first. The moment you are economically empowered, so it gives you the chance to take your own decision, to take a lot of decisions, and you will refuse to being controlled by any other power, including the male let me say the male figure and other males figures, because unfortunately sometimes you find also women they allow their sons to control them as he is the male. So
Mhm.
yeah,
I
also when
think
it comes,
sorry, I just bring it back to the other element of Kate's question, which was about discrimination from men against women in the street. So you think there's this sort of permission even within the home, in which the male, even the son, is given the chance to rule over the mother, rule over the sisters, and this constant elevation and they can do anything on the street as well, and it's not counted.
yeah, and this is why till now our streets are still unsafe for women. So the moment you walk, you hear we practice the sexual harassment, we practice any other things, and we keep saying these words that actually let me say indicates that those males are not let me say I don't know how to express it, but the way they are, the way that the male figure is raised in the community, um, I don't know, maybe it makes him feel like he has the power and the control over any female figure in his community. So maybe it gives him the right to practice the sexual harassment, also because there is no laws that actually stops these males from doing these things. So it's like,
Yeah. Oh, we lost Haneen there for a second. I'm sure she'll come back. She was talking about the lack of legislation really for protecting women. It's something that's growing, but yes, it's definitely lacking in Palestine. We are getting very close to the end of our hour. I have our last question that Kate, you and I wrote for Haneen, so hopefully she'll be back here in a second. But we wanted to ask her about how she thought moving forward equality could be better achieved in Palestine. So we'll give her a couple more seconds to come back in. But how are you finding the discussion?
I just think it's very interesting what she was saying about the concept that men can control even their own mothers. I mean, I just find it astonishing that that seems to be something that's acceptable, because I understand. I actually looked into this quite a lot about there's an element in the Quran where men have taken it and said men have authority over women. And when I researched into this, it actually said men have kind of a higher level of protection. They're needed to protect, they're needed to maintain women. Men are maintainers of women, but not controllers. as a lot of people seem to take it. And it's interesting to me because the one thing that really stood out when I was in that culture and living in that culture was the idea that there is this controlling side. It's completely acceptable for you to say, I need to ask my husband's permission or my father's permission or whoever. And coming from a culture where I could just tell my parents, well, I'm going out now, bye, and that was fine. It's very interesting to see that in some cases, women might never have been outside by themselves without a man. And
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sure it's just as difficult for you to kind of try and imagine that because we grew up the same way. So
yeah, I mean, I mean, the only thing that we have any similarity to, and it's funny, isn't it? This ongoing debate we have as to whether chivalry still exists / should it still exist. And I think that really links into the whole kind of protection idea, is that man opening the door for you, standing on the right side of the pavement so they're blocking you from the car as they walk with you, holding a car door open for you, predominantly being the one that drives the car. That's very controversial, but that's all these ideas of male chivalry and protection that's linked in with religious notions of leadership and leading the home. And it's still ongoing. I mean, even for me, I like it if my partner takes my hand and walks closer to the road. I'm sure it ultimately doesn't mean anything to do with my safety, but it's the idea that he's saying, you know, I'm putting myself second to you and your life. But it is difficult because what does it also denote? And minefield.
I suppose as well, if it was not your choice, if you said you will stand away from the road and I will stand here and block you, then a totally different kind of, you know.
If it's part of a wider package of me not being allowed out by myself, it's very different when it's just the odd time he's walking with me. He takes my hand and walks next to the road. Every other time I walk by the road by myself, so it really doesn't mean much, but it's a gesture of love. But then that is what families in these situations would say, is that it's loving that I'm kept in the home. It's dangerous outside. It's showing their care. So where do we draw the line?
The fact that it is dangerous outside shows that there's this element of culture that needs to kind of be
again,
it's again
and again,
because it shouldn't be unsafe for you know. I've heard a lot of good girls don't go outside after dark, you know. Well,
always putting
why?
the blame on the woman, isn't it? It is
victim blaming, isn't it?
You can live equally in this same society with no threat. I think at that point we have lost Haneen completely, but that is okay because we came to the end of our hour, and I'm sure she can tell us what she thinks needs to be done moving forward for Palestine, and we can maybe put that up in a little written blog. I think that was a really interesting discussion. I think we got to the root of what it is to be free to choose, but also to be forced, and how one item of clothing means two very different things in two different parts of the world.
I agree.
Yeah.
So the freedom to choose, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the conclusion.
Very important choice.
So I guess with that, happy International Women's Day, everybody.
International Women's Day.
We will see you next week to further discuss the book that we're reading together. So thank you for joining us today, and have a lovely week. Okay, bye.
Bye.